Good day, everyone. My name is Rich Chester, and I'm the Director of Business Intelligence at LPA Software Solutions. It's my pleasure to be with you today to talk to you about the new features and functions available in the most recent release of IBM Cognos Analytics, Release 6, otherwise known as version 11.0.6. Our agenda today is to talk to you about the enhancements in the release. We'll start with enhancements to the dashboards and stories features. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a demo right after we talk about those enhancements. Part of the feedback you guys have been so gracious to give me is that by saving all the demos for the end, I'm sometimes very rushed for the demos because there's often a lot to talk about in the release. So what I'm going to do is interweave demos. So we'll first talk about dashboards and stories. I'll do a couple of demos to show you some of the new features. We'll move on to two enhancements in the reporting world that are part of the release that I want to demo for you. We'll talk about core application enhancements, and these are enhancements that impact navigation or impact security, those sorts of things. And there's a couple of interesting things there that I want to talk about. There are some interesting but very difficult to demo configuration updates having to do with authentication sources and things. So I'll tell you what they are. I'll encourage you to take snapshots of the slides when we get there, but I won't be able to demo those. And then I'm going to answer as many questions as time allows. So if you would please submit your questions via the WebEx chat feature as we go. At the end, I will answer as many of those as we have time for. If I run out of time before I run out of questions, I will answer your questions via email after the webinar. Now, before we jump right into the new features and functions of 11.0.6, I want to remind you that all of the webinars, including today's, get recorded and are available on the lpa.com website under /resources and are also available out on our YouTube channel. These are free regardless of which way you access them. We have a big library now of Cognos Analytics webinars we've recorded over the past 14 months. Every time there's a new release, we do one of these what's new in the release. So the last one I did was for 11.05. We've got 4.3 and 2 out there. We also sometimes do a deep dive. I've done deep dives on data modules and on dashboards, and those webinars are out there. I'll also take this moment to remind you that LPA does more than just Cognos Analytics. We also do performance analytics and TM1 and financial performance management. We do predictive analytics, we do Watson analytics, and we do information management, working with you to do data warehouse, data cleansing, use data stage, use Unitiza. So we have webinars on all of those topics as well, and they're all available through the resources page on our website or through our YouTube channel. And I would encourage you to share links to those with your colleagues. And really take advantage of this resource, which we hope you're finding is a valuable education resource. Now, as you do your Cognos Analytics journey, you may find you need some help. And I just want to give you a quick idea of some of the ways LPA might be able to help you on your journey, starting with your upgrade. You might be on Cognos 8, Cognos 10, heck, you might even be on Cognos 7 release. Cognos 8 and 10 are Cognos 8 is definitely off support right now. Cognos 10.0.10.1.x are also not currently supported. And by the way, 10.2.2 and any 10.2.x. The end of support date for those right now is April of 2018. So we've got about a year to upgrade and to stay on a supported release of Cognos Business Intelligence. We can help you with your installation. We can help you with your actual upgrade of your models. That could be framework models. It could be dynamic cubes. It could be your transformer models. We can help you upgrade and test your content to make sure that the upgrade was successful and that all of your reports and queries and analyses all work. And then when you go live, if you have unforeseen difficulties, we can have a support relationship where you can reach out to us to give you a hand. So lots of upgrade services that we might be able to offer you. Upgrading from Series 7 or upgrading really from any other business intelligence non-IBM application is really not an upgrade as much as it is a migration. So that means we can help you plan how you're going to leverage the new and advanced features that are available in Cognos Analytics that were not available to you in your Series 7 world. There's a vast difference between impromptu reports and the value they can bring to your organization, which is pretty good. But there's a difference. When you move to Cognos Analytics, not only do you get the value of the reports, but you also get dashboards and stories and the ability to do web-based modeling with data modules. And you really can move up the analytics maturity curve by virtue of this upgrade. But it's not simple because it's a migration. So we can help you plan the migration. We can help you execute the migration. And one of the things that often happens when you migrate from Series 7 or from a non-IBM business intelligence product is you have a bunch of reports that you need to write. They could be reports you're rewriting from the old tool. It might just be that you have a backlog of reports, whether you're upgrading or not. If you have a collection of reports that need writing, LPA has a focused team in Buffalo, New York, who are trained in an LPA methodology, are certified report authors, and will very, very quickly be able to knock that backlog down for you. So if you have a backlog of reports and are interested in our reporting services, please reach out. Give us a shout, and we'd be happy to talk to you more about those. And then the other thing I'll mention right now is that we have a bunch of training courses that we offer. With the Cognos Analytics upgrade, you know that there is a very different navigation scheme and portal, and some folks want some help training their end users on using that, and we have a class for that. There's new features like dashboards and data modules, and we have classes we've written for those. You may be interested in just teaching people how to report, whether they were using an older version of business intelligence or whether they are brand new to reporting. So we have reporting classes, both basic and advanced reporting classes. If you have cube data sources, we have a focused course on creating reports from cubes. If you are interested in active reports, we have a class there. Framework Manager is still a relevant and a very important tool in your toolbox if you need people trained in Framework Manager, or if you need people trained to administer. Literally any training you need on Cognos Analytics, LPA can provide for you. And we'd love to earn your business. So if you have training needs, please reach out, and we'll be happy to give you the details and hope that it's a fit. So that's how LPA can help you on this journey. Let's talk about the components of the new Release 6, Release 11.0.6 that came out on March 17th of this year. Let's start with dashboards and stories. First enhancement that's exciting is that you can use packages now with cubes, OLAP packages. That could be DMR, a PowerCube, could be an S-based cube or an analysis services cube. Could be a TM1 cube. The Release 5 gave me the ability to use relational packages to source a dashboard. Release 6 moves me forward yet again and gives me the ability to use OLAP packages to source a dashboard. Now, in order to use a package in a dashboard, relational or OLAP, it has to leverage a dynamic query mode data source. So the data source has to be set up with dynamic query mode. So if you're using, let's say, a SQL Server data source, you need to set up the JDBC portion of the data source definition in order to leverage that package in a dashboard. Just like in Release 5, when you use a package in Release 6, whether it's relational or OLAP, the data tray button down here in the bottom, which you use in a dashboard to create global filters for all visualizations created from a particular source, is not available. You cannot create global filters against a package, but you can use a package, which was a big improvement in 11.05 with relational, and now an even bigger improvement in 11.06 with dimensional. And I'm often asked, hey, Rich, if I use a dimensional package, can I actually drill down on visualizations in my dashboard? And the answer is yes. So in my example here, I built a line chart. I grabbed the product line level from my products dimension. I grabbed the year level from my time dimension, and I dropped in quantity shipped, I believe. Yep. And the tool automatically gave me a line chart. And then I clicked on the camping equipment value here in the horizontal axis. Now, since that is a member from an OLAP level, it popped up with these three buttons here. These are my drill buttons. So this first button is my drill up. Since I didn't drill down, there's no drill up available to me. This is the top level. I got drill down available to me, and I have a navigate button. What navigate does is it shows me the whole drill path and lets me jump to any level in the hierarchy, as opposed to have to always traverse levels in order. So if I were to click on this drill down button here, since I had picked the camping equipment member when I clicked on it, this would redisplay with the next level down product types, and it would show me the camping equipment product types. So it would redisplay my line chart and display the camping equipment product types by year. So drill works just the way you would expect it to work. In 11.05, they introduced a new mapping widget, and that mapping widget leveraged a new partnership IBM had forged with a company called Mapbox. And in that release, I could map data at the state and the country level. With 11.06, they have introduced elements of their partnership with Pitney Bowes and have laid over the top of these base maps polygons that show you not only states and countries, but also provinces, counties, cities, villages, all the way down to zip codes or postal codes. So international maps, so it understands postal codes from across the world, not just in the US or Canada. It understands villages, it understands provinces, it understands states, and you can map data at a very fine level at this point. Now, I show here a picture where I mapped population by city, and I'm showing you right now Massachusetts. And you can see Boston. This shape is the shape of the city of Boston, and you see it's a dark blue because it has the highest population. Over here, I've got some light blue cities, and then I've got some very pale cities. You see down here, down below 50,000. And here's a city I've outlined by hovering over it. So it pops out what the population is, and this happens to be Plymouth Town. And you can see these are, they can be very irregular shapes. But the maps handle all of that for you. Now, some cities, let's take Rochester, where I live. Rochester, there's a Rochester, New York. There's a Rochester, Minnesota. So the city Rochester is ambiguous. So if I just drop Rochester in and say map it, the map is not going to know which Rochester to map. So there's this new drop zone that's also part of this release called the Refine Regions drop zone. And I learned a new word from my IBM colleagues on disambiguate. And the notion is you use the Refine Region drop zone to clarify the which Rochester you mean. Or which London you mean. So there's this notion of making the city less ambiguous by putting another geographic component into the map. Usually it's the level right above. So if you will, a postal code would have a city right above it. So that would be your refine. A city has a state in the next level above it in the geographic hierarchy. So in this case, as you see, state was how I refined my cities. So that drop zone will help the map know which Rochester to map. Now, when you don't use the refine regions, it may tell you, and there'll be a little warning sign in the upper corner of the map if there are any ambiguous cities. So you can click on it, you can see the cities that are ambiguous. So it tells you if there's ambiguity, and it also therefore tells you when there's not ambiguity because of the absence of the warning sign. I'll build this exact map for you in the demo, and I'll show you that little warning sign, and then we'll disambiguate together. When I create a dashboard or a story and I drop visualizations on showing data from one data source, all the visualizations from that one data source talk to each other. The talking to each other is really, if I click on a value in widget 1, it will either highlight or filter widget 2, provided they're from the same data source. Now, sometimes that's highly desirable. Sometimes it would be nice to break those connections. Or better yet, if I have multiple widgets from the same data source, maybe let's say I have 4. Maybe I want these 2 to talk and these 2 to talk, and I don't want all 4 to talk to each other. There's a new button you can click on your dashboard when you create it that will allow you to specify whether the connections exist at all on a widget, and if they do, you can create like connection families. They number them. The default family is everybody's listening as part of family 1. You see in my picture here, I created a second family, family 2, and I associated the top 2 widgets with family 2 and the bottom 2 widgets with family 1. So I'll show you how this connecting disconnecting notion of widgets from the same data source works. Widgets from different data sources don't talk to each other. So this only applies when you have multiple visualizations on your dashboard that come from the same data source. In 11.05, IBM introduced the notion in the data module world of creating navigation paths. Data modules are relational objects. You model relational data. It could be uploaded files, could be connections to a database called a data server connection that you model tables from a database. And you can use relational packages even as a source in your data module. But it's sometimes desirable, as we know in framework models, to introduce on your relational data some drill paths, so the ability to drill up and down even though the data you've modeled is relational. In Framework Manager, we call that DMR. In a data module, we call that a navigation path or a navigation group. You'll see both terms. You define them in the data module, you leverage them in a dashboard. Problem was, if they existed in your data module, you didn't know it. If someone had to tell you. There was no visible way when you selected a data module that contained a navigation path and used it in your dashboard. There was no way to know that there were navigation paths, how many of them there might be, and what columns were part of the paths. In 11.06, that is now crystal clear, because in the metadata tree, when you're building your dashboard from a data module that has a navigation path, it shows you the navigation paths and the hierarchy, the levels. And so you can then use those drill buttons like I illustrated with the OLAP package. Same drill buttons will appear in widgets where I used columns that are part of navigation paths. And I can drill up and down in the navigation paths. If you want more information or a demo of how to define a navigation path, check out our 11.05 webinar. So I'll show you how what this looks like, just to give you a quick gander at it when we do the demo. In 11.05, a new story type was introduced. It was called a guided journey. The notion of a guided journey is that you are presented with a canvas filled with interesting stuff, and you sort of get the gestalt of the story that the presenter is trying to tell you. And then the canvas navigates, and you zoom in on individual widgets as the presenter tells the story that the canvas conveys. There was only a couple of templates in 11.05. They've added a few more templates in 11.06. Now, I don't demo stories in this webinar, and it occurs to me that maybe there's some folks out there that would be interested in a webinar on the story tool in Cognos Analytics. We haven't done one yet. So in addition to any questions that you might be typing into the chat window, if you have a particular interest in knowing more about the story tool in Cognos Analytics, please just write a comment in the chat window and let us know. If there's enough interest based on this informal survey, then I'll go ahead and I'll create a story webinar and give you a deep dive into the story feature. So let us know, please. But I won't demo stories. We just won't have time today for that demo. But let me know if you'd like a deeper dive on that. Some last few enhancements before we get into the first set of demos. Grid widget is a part of the dashboard world. It's a list widget. It's a tabular widget. It presents measures and non-measures. And in previous releases, you could put in measures and non-measures, and you would see your data in a list, but you couldn't subtotal. You didn't have groups, and you didn't have footers on those groups in previous releases. In this release, they've enhanced the widget so that you can have footers on your groups that you've got in your grid widget. There's a property that you can indicate to turn them on or off with. By default, they're on. One of the vexing things about creating a tabbed dashboard, or any dashboard really, was when you launched it, you pick a template. Well, you get halfway through writing your dashboard and you realize you picked the wrong template. And it was possible but difficult to change the template after you had gotten underway. In this release, on a tabbed dashboard, you can click on the tab and it will present you with a button where you can click and select a different template as you go. So I will pick the wrong template and then I will change it to the right template as part of our demo. Text widgets have a new feature in their property sheet. In the font dropdown, there's now an entry called Auto. And if you create and size a text widget on your screen and you type text into it, when it's set to auto, the text will automatically scale to fit the text widget size. So you put the text widget on, you set the size, you set the style of text, and you start typing text. If you set font to auto, it will auto scale your text. And then finally, in the world of stories, whether they're guided journeys or not, one of the interesting things about the story world is that they're animated. And they've added some new animation effects to the stories in this release. So with that all said, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these new dashboard features. So I'm going to go ahead and sign on to my Cognos 11.0.6 environment. And I'm going to create a dashboard. And I'll pick this template to get started on my tabbed dashboard. I'm going to go and use an OLAP data source. I'm going to go out to the samples area and I'm going to grab a DMR model, Go Sales Analysis, and add that. I'm going to go ahead and create a widget. Let's create a widget that is going to chart product line and it's going to chart revenue. So I'll just drag revenue on top. And I realized, boy, that's a very small widget, and I kind of picked the wrong template. So let me click on the tab and click on this new button, change template, and let me select a better template. And then I can move my widget to the drop zone on my template, and that looks much better. So that's that new feature on a tab dashboard. I can change the template after I get started, which I think is actually, small, it's the little things sometimes, right? I think that's a great enhancement. I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to put my regions from my retailers hierarchy. I'll put those over here. And right now, I've got two widgets from the same data source, so they talk. If I click on Southern Europe, you'll note that the chart is now filtered to Southern Europe. If I click on Central Europe, the chart will redisplay and be filtered to Central Europe. Okay, so, and if I click on personal accessories over here, it would actually try to filter this chart. It's bidirectional communication, automatic, when you create visualizations from the same data source. Let me put a couple more on here. I'm going to go ahead and, again, I'll use region over here. And I'm going to plot quantities by region. And for that matter, I'm going to go ahead and put my product lines over here in a list. Now, these lists of values, right, they kind of act like prompts. I can click on mountaineering equipment. You see it's filtered my regions here. You see Central Europe is highlighted here, so it's highlighted Central Europe. Mountaineering equipment is highlighted here. You see, when it's visible, the value I click highlights. When it's not visible, the value I click filters. So here, product line's not visible, it's filtering by product line. Here, region's not visible, so it's filtering by region. But maybe I don't want them all four talking to each other. Maybe that's not the need I have. Maybe what I want is these two guys to talk and these two bottom guys to talk. So I want to break the connections and reform them. So this new button up here in the corner called View Widget Connections will move me into a mode where it shows me the communication families that are on my chart. And by default, since they all came from the same data source, they're all going to talk to each other. So they all belong to the same family number 1. I'm going to go ahead and click on this widget. And I'm going to get this pop-up. And the pop-up gives me 3 options, only 2 of which are currently available. First option is create a new connection, start another family. Basically, create connection family 2. The next one is to break all links. In other words, this guy should not communicate with anybody, which might be reasonable to do on some dashboards. This third one is going to be join a family, but there's only one family to join right now, so it's not visible. Let me create a new family. So you see now this guy is widget family 2, or communication family 2, pardon me. Now I'll click on this guy, and you see now I can join widget family 2. So when I click on here, it presents the two families. I'm going to join family 2. So now communication family 2 is between just these two widgets. Communication family 1 down here for these two widgets. So with that change made, when I go back into my non-communication mode here, and I'm just using my dashboard, when I click on Asia Pac, only this widget is listening. Okay, and so now I'm only filtering that one widget. Similarly, down here on the bottom, when I click on camping equipment, you see only this bottom widget is listening. These two guys are talking, and these two guys are talking, but they're not talking to each other. So that's the notion behind creating these communication groups or families, as I've taken to calling them. One more thing I want to show you, and that's the mapping enhancement, and that notion of the warning and the disambiguation. So I'm going to start a new dashboard in a moment. First, though, I'm going to upload a file. That's that Massachusetts data that I referred to earlier. I just downloaded this off the web. It's got city. It's just Massachusetts, so the state is actually always MA, and it's got population. I'm going to go ahead and save that. That goes right out into your My Folders. I'm going to go back to my welcome screen. My content, pardon me, not my folders. I will right-click and choose Create Dashboard from that uploaded file. I'll just use a template that, without a bunch of drop zones. Notice on the left-hand side, it's got the 3 columns I uploaded. It noted when I uploaded it, some background smarts borrowed from Watson Analytics, I'm told, noticed that city and state were geographic data, and so that little icon here tells me they're geography related. This little icon tells me population is a measure. What I'm going to do is I want to start a map. So I'm going to do this not by dragging and dropping my columns like I did in the last demo. I'm going to do this by starting by clicking on the visualization I want and then populating it. So here's all the visualizations that the dashboards support. You hover over them, they tell you their name. The map I want, there's 2. The map I want is simply called map. That's the map that uses the Mapbox base maps and now the Pitney Bowes shapes. This is the legacy map. This is a terrific map, but it's not as detailed as the new map widget. And what I want to demo is this new map widget. So let me drag it over here and drop it into my canvas, and up will pop my drop zones. So I'll go back to my data. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop city into my regions. And since it's only Massachusetts cities, you see it kind of zooms me in. It helps me out by zooming me in on the area. I'll drop population into region color, and what we should see is a key comes up, and I should see some colors. Now, I happen to know, because I did this demo before, that it didn't plot every city, because some of the cities are ambiguous, like Boston, as it turns out. I'm going to collapse this map so I can show you. You see this little warning guy? This tells you there's ambiguous locations. If you click on it, it'll actually list the ambiguous locations. So we need to fix. You fix by using refine regions. And again, the rule of thumb is that if you are, whatever you're plotting by, in my case city, you use the next level up in geography to disambiguate it, which in our case is going to be state. Now, once I add the state there, now you're going to see that I have a lot more interesting data. Boston is highlighted now as the city with the highest population. You see my shapes. These are all individual cities. If you hover over them, they'll tell you the data that I have in my uploaded file, right? So this is the ability to go all the way down to zip code, but internationally. So it understands province, it understands state, it understands the notion of postal zones and all of that stuff. It's really very sophisticated spatial analysis now available to me in my dashboards with this release. I'm going to collapse this guy down. You'll see I've no longer got any ambiguous items. I'll make it a little bigger. You might say to yourself, I wish I didn't have this key here. You can actually, there's a property sheet for everything in a dashboard. On the property sheet, you can hide the legend, and then it won't take up any space at all. Also, in this release, they introduced this style property for these new maps, and there's a number of built-in styles. I haven't gone through all of them. I can't necessarily express exactly what makes one better than the other. I happen to like streets. That one seemed to make sense to me. If you're new to these maps and you've never played with them, you may not be aware of this little guy down here on the bottom. This is a button that's a toggle. Right now I'm in Move the Widget mode. If I click and drag, it moves the widget. If I click again down here, now I'm in Pan and Zoom mode. And now I'm using my mouse scroll wheel to zoom, and I'm clicking and dragging to pan. So you can pan around the world. You can zoom in and out. And I'll just keep on zooming in. There is an amazing amount of detail in these new maps that now combine Mapbox, maps, and Pitney Bowes shapes in this release. So that's the mapping demo, and that's really the dashboard and story demo that I had in mind. Let's go back to the slides. And let's talk about the next set of enhancements, which are enhancements in the world of reports. There's two enhancements in this release on reports. The first one has to do with sourcing a report from a data module. So data modules introduced with Cognos Analytics, web-based modeling tool. They create metadata. And in concept, they're very similar to a package, although they're implemented in very different ways. From the get-go, you've been able to create a report from either a package or a data module. But with data modules, you really had very, very little, if any, control over the queries. You couldn't create a query calculation. You couldn't edit a query. You couldn't join queries. Really, the whole Query Explorer was of no value to you when you sourced a report from a data module until now. In Release 6, queries sourced from a data module are pretty much have all the same functionality as queries sourced from a package. Really puts the two metadata objects that you can use to source a report kind of on par with each other. So you can add query calculations now. You can edit your queries. You can edit filters within those queries. You can join. You can union. So you can use the expression editor on your data items. So really, if you didn't know about the limitation before, this sounds like, big deal. But the fact is, it was a big limitation, in my opinion, in the previous releases, where now I do not have any query limitations, and it makes data modules even more attractive as the source for my reports. So I'll give you a demo of using a data module and using some of these query tools that I couldn't do before. Also in the world of reports is the notion of a frozen list column. So for those of you who don't know, when Cognos Analytics was introduced, it incorporated the Cognos 10 viewer when you run reports, but also incorporated a brand new viewer called the interactive viewer. So two viewers. And there's a property in your report that you set. No on this property is use the Cognos 10 viewer. Yes in this property is use the interactive viewer. By the way, when you upgrade, all the reports that you upgrade from Cognos 10 will come in with that property set to no. Any new reports you create in Cognos Analytics, that property would default to yes. You can change it in either case. You can change no's to yes. You can change yes to no. If it's set to yes and you're using the interactive viewer on a list, there's a new property in the list property sheet called scrollable area height. So scrollable area height, entries are in pixels, and you describe how big the list should be on your screen when you run in the interactive viewer in HTML format. And what will happen is it will use that space and present the list inside it and give you a scroll bar so that you can scroll up and down the list contents as shown here. So We can use a data module as a data source, and we can manipulate the queries and create calculations with it now. And with lists run in the interactive viewer, we can present them in HTML and have them be scrollable automatically simply by setting that property. So let's go ahead and take a look at both of those right now. So I will go ahead and create a new report. I'm going to use a data module. And the data module is in my team content, and it is called historical sales data. And rather than jump right in and build my list, I'm actually going to create a couple of queries and join them. I don't actually have to. This module would not require me to do a join for the join I'm going to do. I just want to show you that you can in this release because you couldn't before. So I'm going to go to my Query Explorer. I'll click on my Queries folder. I'll click on my toolbox. Already it's different because this toolbox only had queries in it in the previous releases. I'll drag over a query, another query, and a join. And I will join my queries. And now I need to edit my queries. Another thing I couldn't do before this release when I sourced from a data module. From my data module, I will bring over year and product line. Again, I'm just doing this for an example, not because this is a sensible join to do. It's just it's one of those things that I'm doing it because I can and to demonstrate this capability for you. So in this second query, I'll bring over year and product line, but also some more good stuff. And then I'll go back to my Query Explorer, and I will define my join. And I'll join year to year, product line to product line. This will be a one-to-many join, right? And you're probably saying to yourself, Rich, this looks all normal to me. Well, now it is. With data modules before, this couldn't be done. I probably said that enough now. Double-click on Query 3. I'll go up and add from my data items some data from my constituent queries, and there you go. And now I'll go back to my report page on the Page Explorer, and I will add a list. So I'll define the list, and then we'll use that new property. I actually should have, and so I will do it now, changed my query to the result of my join, which was query 3. I know I'm going fast, but I want to be sure I fit in as much as I can, and also have time for questions. So I hope you'll forgive me for that, for going as quickly as I am. If you want more information, again, drop a note in the chat, and I will provide as much information as I can. I'll group the list. So now I have a standard list that happens to be the result of a join using a data module data source. Let me do two things. Let me go back to my Explorer and click on the report level and just show you the run with full interactivity properties. So yes means when this report runs, it's going to use the new interactive viewer. No means when this report runs, it's going to use the Cognos 10 viewer. Yes is the default for new reports. That's why it's set to yes. I need it to be yes for this demo, so I'm not going to change it. Just wanted to show you where it was. Now back on my list, new property, scrollable area height. You enter pixels. I'm going to go with 400 pixels because I happen to know that will fit nicely on this screen. Now if I go ahead and run an HTML, it's going to present this list using the interactive viewer, and it's going to present the list in a 400 pixel high space, and it's going to have a scroll bar. And when I scroll, you'll see that the titles will not scroll off the page. But the observant among you will notice that I have page down links, which means there's more data than is shown here in the list. Well, that's because when I run an HTML, there's a default number of rows per page. That happens to be fewer rows than my whole list is. So I think it might be 20 is the default, but don't quote me on that. There's a default, though, of a maximum rows per page when you run an HTML. So for this really to demonstrate the full functionality, I actually want to change my run options and set to 1,000 rows per page. I happen to know that's more than enough for this list. So present everything in this list on the same page. So now when I run, it's going to present all the data in that scrollable region, and there'll be no page down links. So here you go. So you see my scrollable region will take me all the way down through my data. Notice that not only do the titles stay put, but so does the overall summary. So it's actually what's between the titles and the overall summary that is scrolling. So those are the enhancements to the reporting environment that are part of Release 6. Okay, back to the slides. So this next section is going to talk about core application enhancements. These are enhancements that might be navigation, they might be security related. It's stuff that's not part of reports, dashboards, and data modules, really. So let's talk about those. First one to talk about is the one I'm going to spend some time demonstrating at the end of this section, and that's custom folders for roles. And it goes something like this. In 11.05, IBM introduced the notion of being able to customize the user interface and to specify customizations of look and feel, a different homepage, turn on and off different features that are in the UI, change the coloration of the UI by using themes, and they introduced that by role. Now, when I say by role, I actually mean the security object role that we're used to in the Cognos namespace. So if you use the Manage button on the bottom left, that's this bottom button here if you're an administrator, Manage Accounts will allow you to go in and examine roles and groups and manage membership and so on. But with roles, they'll also let you manage customizations. So here in my screenshot, I've selected a custom role that I have chosen to edit. You see there's general information. There's the membership here where I can manage members. I can manage permissions on the role. So, just like I could before in the administration console, I can now do that here in manage accounts, but also and only in manage accounts. I get this customization tab. And when I click on that customization tab for this role happens to be a role for my HR users. The members are all members of my human resources group. So I click on customization, and I can set a home page for those folks. So when they log on, because they're a member of this role, they'll get these customizations, and I can set a home page for them. I can turn on and off features for them. This is what's in certain menus. It's what's in the new menu, for example. I can control what's in the bar across the top. I can control lots of knobs to twiddle on look and feel in features. Themes is generally speaking coloration. Home pages, what do they land on? Do they land on the welcome screen? Do they land on a report? Do they land on a dashboard? And then in this release, they added custom folder. Okay, so that gives you the background for customization by role in general. Now, folders by role works like this. Think back to Cognos 8 and Cognos 10 and the fact that once in a while you actually built a custom tab. They had my folders, they had public folders, and then you would give them a tab with a navigator on it that would give them easy access to the reports and things that they needed in the portal. So when they logged in, they got these 3 tabs. Well, there's no way to replicate that exactly in Cognos Analytics. But with this feature, we come a little bit closer. With this feature, what I can do is part of the role customization is I can click on custom folder and I can select a folder out in team content to display to all the users who log in who are members of this role. So how will that look? Well, it'll look like this. It will actually be a new icon under team content and above the recent icon. So obviously the user that logged in was a member of the role that I customized on the previous page. And this showed up when I click on this guy. It shows me the contents of that folder. So this is a quick way for me to give a custom button to a logged in user to give them access to interesting content. So in Cognos 10, I might have had a tab with a navigator widget on it to do that sort of thing. Here in 11.06, I can actually add a button to the interface that exposes the contents of a folder to a collection of users. So I'll do a demonstration of setting that up, and I'll log in as a user and show you how that works. Now, as you know, users can be members of more than one role. In my example, if I have a custom HR role and I also want those people to be authors, maybe I'll also map them to the built-in role authors in security. So now I'm a member of two roles, and both of those roles might have a customization component. Which one wins? Well, in the customization tab, actually right here under this advanced guy, there is an entry called priority. And until you customize a role, the priority is set to 0. As soon as you add customizations on a role, it sets the priority to 1. But let's suppose I've customized the author's role and the SHR role. Well, now they're both set to 1. What I need to do is on the one I want to win, the one I want to control the UI, I have to set that priority higher. Even just 1 higher is enough. Whichever role has the highest customization priority, it is those customizations that'll be presented to the user. So that's one thing you just want to be sure of, because almost all of us are going to have people who belong to more than one role. And if you happen to have customized multiple roles, you want to be sure that the role that should control the UI has the highest priority. So I'll show you that in a moment. In the meantime, I'll also talk to you about this new feature in the user interface. Again, in 11.0.5, IBM introduced this notion of right-clicking on a dashboard or a report, and you would have an entry there called Share or an entry called Embed. And so, the report wasn't running. The report was, you navigated to team content, you found an interesting report, you right-click on it, you choose Share, and Cognos will give you a URL. It'll give you a link. You copy that hyperlink, paste it into an email, let's say, send that email. Person can click on that hyperlink, and it will run that report for them. Could have been a dashboard as well, by the way. They could share a dashboard link. Embed is similar, but instead of giving you a hyperlink to paste into things, what it gives you is code for a frame to add to a web page. So if you wanted to insert a report in a web page you were designing, you could choose Embed, and it would give you the code for that. If you just wanted to put a link to a report or a dashboard in an email, let's suppose, or on a web page, even so, Share would give you the code for that link. Now, that was for reports that weren't running. That was reports you navigated to. In this release, they've given you Embed and Share for reports that are open and in front of you. You get to the Embed and Share by clicking on the More button and for the open report or open dashboard. Or even an open saved version of a report will have the Embed and Share option. You click on Embed or Share, you get the code you need to present the open object. If it's a report, and let's suppose that that report had a few prompts, not only will you get the code to present that report again, the URL will have the prompt values you selected embedded right in it. So it will reproduce exactly this report. The default behavior when you do a share or embed is to show the latest save output. If no saved output exists, then it will run the report, provided it can, right? And nothing's changed, and the user who clicked on it actually has access to the report, right? Security is always on. So in 05, I could share and embed any report or dashboard by right-clicking on it. In 11.06, I can share or embed any dashboard, report, or saved output that I happen to have open by clicking the More button. Sometimes it's the little things that can make a big difference. To create a report view in previous releases, you had to run the report and then use the save icon to do save as report view. Shortcuts were very difficult to achieve in previous releases. Now, you can create shortcuts and report views simply by right-clicking on the object. So in the screenshot here, I right-clicked on the employee satisfaction report. I can quickly create a report view of it, or I can quickly create a shortcut to it. Again, sometimes it's the little things. So that's in Release 6 as well. I'm not going to go into detail about these data sources, but these are new data sources available to you in the dynamic query mode in Release 6. I will point out that Planning Analytics 2.0 Data sources are now officially supported in dynamic query mode in Cognos Analytics Release 6. So that's good news for those of us who own both Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics, which a lot of people know as TM1. Planning Analytics Local is TM1. Planning Analytics without the local is the cloud version of that offering. So Planning Analytics support in Release 6, along with some Google and some Microsoft Cloud support. One last thing before we get into the demonstration, and that is data server definitions. So in previous releases, you had a data server definition tab, and it was cumbersome to use, and you didn't really have some of the shortcut options that they've introduced in Release 6. For example, you could, if you had a good JDBC connection string, you couldn't just paste it in. You had to actually manipulate the UI so that Cognos created that connection string for you. Now you can just paste it in. You could test the data source, but when it succeeded, you got no feedback. You didn't get anything. Now you'll get feedback. The settings tab wasn't there. To get to the settings for a connection, you had to right-click. So they have streamlined the UI in this Release 6 for data server definitions. Remember, I use data servers to model data in data modules directly against the database. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and demonstrate this folders by role. Let me go back to my welcome screen and show you out here in my team content. I have a folder called role folders. And in it, I've got a folder for finance that contains interesting financial reports. And I have a folder for HR that has interesting HR reports. And what I'd like to do is make access to these folders easy for my finance and HR users. What I want to do is I want to put an icon right here on the left-hand side under team content. And when I'm a finance user, it will be the finance icon and it will show me these reports. And when I'm an HR user and log in, it will, when I click that button, it will show me these reports. So that's my goal. So to do that, now that I've got my folders of interesting stuff, I go to Manage, Accounts. And I've got some custom roles in the Cognos namespace right here in the folder. I've got a finance role and I've got an HR role. I'm going to go ahead and go to the property sheet for my finance role. I'll click on customization. And you see I've got the ability to customize the home page for the members of this role. Features, themes, those were in 11.05. The new one is folder. I'm going to click over here and just show you that I've mapped this role to that finance folder out in team content. Let me just quickly show you what it would look like if it weren't mapped. It would, I would click here. It would let me navigate to the folder. Select it. The thing you got to remember to do is click apply. If you just close or go on to something else, it won't keep the setting. You got to make sure you click apply. I already did the same thing on my HR users. The only difference is that my customization took these users to the HR folder that was out there in the team content. Membership has already been set. The thing I want to show here is that if you're a member of one of these roles, you get that extra icon that shows that custom folder. Now, this notion of priority. I happen to know that all the members in HR and all the members in finance happen to also be authors and members of the author role. To ensure that the customization, this folder, it takes precedence over any customizations on the author role, I would want to be sure that I set this priority number to a number higher than the priority on the author's role. So I'll just set this to 2. Because the author's role was set to 1. So I'll do that on both finance and on HR so that I can ensure that when these users log in, this is the customization that they will get. Okay? If I had not customized authors, I wouldn't have to change it because as soon as I customize, it sets priority to 1. If I haven't customized, priority is set to 0. Just wanted to show you this priority notion. All right, I'm done. Let me go ahead and log in as a finance user. So finance user is a member of that custom role. That role has been mapped to the finance folder. The priority has been set so that this is the role that will control my customization. So if I sign in as my finance user, what I expect to get on the left-hand side is an icon that presents the contents of the finance folder. Now, if I log back on as me, I am not a member of either role, and so I will not get a customization. And if I log in as my HR user, what I'll get is the human resources access right over here. Okay, so if we had created navigation tabs in Cognos 10 to help people get to interesting content, I can create navigation buttons now in Release 6 that help people get to interesting content. All right, back in the slides, and I do want to have some time for questions, so I'm probably going to go through these really fast. If you're interested, make sure you take a snapshot of the screen. New authentication source called BlueID. IBM has a cloud-based identity solution you can subscribe to. If you do, and you want to use those IDs to log into your Cognos environment with Release 6, you can. There's a bunch of information in the admin guide that will help you get that set up. Additionally, there's some support to do single sign-on for your dynamic query mode JDBC type connections. So no changes to using Kerberos for single sign-on to the Cognos Analytics portal, but now you have the option to use it with your JDBC database connections as well. Microsoft has an extension to this Kerberos security scheme of theirs called Constraint Delegation. IBM Cognos Analytics hasn't before R6 supported Constraint Delegation. Now you can use Constraint Delegation in Cognos Analytics as part of this release. And then one last thing before I get to some of the questions you've submitted. I apologize now. I won't be able to get to all of them, but I will by email later. This is a way for you, we once in a while we find ourselves modifying files out in the Cognos Analytics install folders. And of course, we do an upgrade in place, and the folders are overwritten or the files are overwritten. So there's now a file out there called preserve.txt under the configuration preserve folder. Don't touch the CA base preserve, that's IBM's. Preserve.txt, that's yours. You have instructions right in the text file that tell you exactly how to make entries so that your customized files can be preserved on upgrade. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and take some of the questions. First question I have is, can I use an OLAP package in a data module? No. Data modules right now are relational only objects. Now I can create these drill paths in them, these navigation paths, but I cannot source them from a cube. So no OLAP packages, no connections via data servers to cubes for data modules at this time. Can I drill through from a dashboard to a report? Not yet. I was recently at a session with IBM where product management was there, and we asked a lot of questions. This question actually came up, and the product manager basically said, look, it's on the roadmap. We know this is important functionality. It's not in Release 6, but it's on the roadmap. And as you know, IBM really is hesitant to share timing of things that are on the roadmap. So a future release is all we can really say at this time. Oh, and by the way, they also said and vice versa. In other words, he said, yes, and maybe you want to drill from a report to a dashboard, not just from a dashboard to a report. Next question. Can I create custom polygons for a map in Release 6? Not yet. This is another one on the roadmap, but no indication of what release it will be in. Can I use the new maps in a report? No, not yet. Again, roadmap thing. Boy, I'm Dr. No today. The roadmap to be able to leverage all of the cool new visualizations in reports, but just not quite yet. They're not quite in sync yet. Can I map using latitude and longitude? not in R6. Oh my gosh, another doctor, no. Not in R6, but it is absolutely on the roadmap. Again, when I happened to talk to the product manager in charge of mapping, and so he was very clear that there's a lot more to come when it comes to these maps. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with these first 2 releases. So I'm looking forward to what's coming down the pike. Is Rave 2 in Release 6? Absolutely. Rave 2 was added in Release 5. It is what a lot of the widgets in the dashboards are running on. By the way, Rave 1 is also in Cognos Analytics in Release 6. So both Rave engines, the Cognos 10 one, as well as this new Rave 2 one, which is more of a JavaScript type Rave engine than a VizJSON type Rave engine. And a lot of the new features, including, I think, the new maps, running on Rave 2. So yes, it's absolutely there. Follow-up there was, can I use D3 JavaScript chart library? Oh, I'm back to not yet. That's definitely, again, on the roadmap, but at this time it's not in R6, and they don't really have a forecast for when it's coming. Well, I've done it again. I've used a whole hour, and I have finished the hour long before I finished the questions. For those of you who submitted questions that I didn't have a chance to answer right now, I will answer them via email after the webinar over the next day or so. And if you wanted to submit a question and you didn't, go ahead and submit it directly to me. My email address is here on the screen. All that remains really is for me to say thank you very much for spending another hour with me to explore the world of IBM Cognos Analytics. Look forward to having you come back next time, and until then, take care. Thanks very much.